We are here at the Maritime Decarbonisation Europe Conference, Awards and Exhibition, and I'm here with Dr. Faig Abbasov, who is the Shipping Programme Director at Transport and Environment. Now, Doctor, there was a bit of a stunned silence where I was sitting when you mentioned, when you illustrated that carbon capture and storage on board vessels does not qualify for EU ETS. And we had been hearing quite a lot this morning about carbon capture and storage. Could you just expand and explain that situation for us?
As it stands, the European shipping, meaning the ships that call at European ports, will have to pay for their emissions starting from next year, and they will have to switch to alternative technologies to reduce the carbon intensity of fuel they use. In doing so, they will have few alternatives. They can reduce overall fuel consumption, meaning energy efficiency. They can switch to alternative fuels. One technology that shipping industry has been thinking about, the onboard carbon capture, meaning preventing emissions going into atmosphere and potentially storing it on land. As it stands, neither EU ETS nor Fuel EU Maritime regulation will allow using this technology for compliance purposes. In the future, those regulations might change, they might be revised. And in fact, this is one of the revision points for potential consideration of those technologies at the EU level. But as it stands, come 1st of January 2024 or 1st of January 2025 for the start of those regulations, CCS, onboard CCS, will not be allowed to use for compliance purposes.
Okay, well, that's clear. And my understanding is that EU has the polluter pays principle. And so even if there is a change to allow carbon capture and storage on board, it won't be 100%. I imagine there'll be a degree of polluter pays still remains within.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good point. One key rule at the EU level is once you emit CO2, you have to pay for it. Even if that CO2 is captured and used to produce, for example, e-methanol, because e-methanol requires CO2, then the credit for capturing that CO2, or rather credit for not emitting that CO2, will be given to the fuel, not to the ship. So essentially, it will be ship owner will still have to pay for the CO2, even though that CO2 is captured and is used to produce e-methanol. So the kind of a division of benefit will lie with the fuel, not with the ship owner.
And if we follow that argument, for a cement factory, for instance, that's producing carbon, if they see that shipping is granted some sort of leeway in the regulation, surely they will call foul on that.
Absolutely. At the moment, cement factory, if they capture the CO2, give to methanol plant to produce e-methanol, cement factory still has to pay for it. It will be considered as a polluter. It's a methanol factory that becomes, the fuel, the product becomes carbon neutral. One thing to add here, though, like an important caveat, if that CO2 is captured and then later on stored underground, that's a different topic. But here we're talking about capturing CO2 and reutilizing it elsewhere. In this case, in this scenario, the polluter pays principle will still apply, meaning the ship would still, in the future, if it ever is become part of the system, will still have to pay for the CO2.
Okay, well, that's clear. One of the other things you mentioned was e-kerosene and the aviation industry. Could you expand on that as well?
Of course. As part of the Fit for 55 package, EU also has aviation fuel regulation, basically mandating fuel suppliers at airports to blend in X amount of alternative sustainable aviation fuels, they call it SAF, each time the planes refuel. And you have the alternative fuels target, and then you have a sub-quota for e-kerosene, meaning that you can have biokerosene, but make sure that X% of it is e-kerosene. And e-kerosene can be produced synthetically. You need hydrogen, renewable hydrogen, and CO2 for that. And to produce that, you first produce e-crude, a bit like a crude oil, and then you refine it down to final products. It could be e-petrol, e-diesel, e-kerosene, even e-wax for that matter. And depending on where the refinery, that dedicated refinery, is aiming to market its products, it can optimize it for one product or other product. But you can never have 100% e-kerosene. You can have 50%, and we understand you can even go up to 70% e-kerosene. That means that you still have a byproduct, and that byproduct will likely be e-diesel, we understand. And the question comes where you can use that e-diesel. Our recommendation is use that e-diesel in shipping sector. Number one, because alternative dual fuel technologies will still need pilot fuel.
Yes.
Whether it's e-methanol, e-hydrogen as a dual fuel technology, or e-ammonia, or even e-methane. All of those require pilot fuel, and the pilot fuel needs to be of diesel type to start the combustion. And that diesel could be fossil diesel, biodiesel, or e-diesel, and we recommend to use that e-diesel for that purpose.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. That was very enlightening, and you provoked a lot of questions at the event. Was the event what you were expecting, to be in a room of ship owners who might have been maybe a little surprised at some of the things you said?
Not at all. I very much enjoy being part of the shipping debate, and I certainly learn a lot from ship owners, and I never shy away from, confronting difficult questions and objections. I think that's part of the process. I was expecting ship owners, technology providers to be here, so in that sense, it was not a surprise. It was a welcome opportunity.